Welcome to the Property Management Law Solutions Podcast. Your host, Attorney Tim Baldwin, will guide you in all things property management, law, markets, politics, and commentary. Your property is his priority. Here's your host, Attorney Tim Baldwin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Property Management Law Solutions Podcast. I am your host, Attorney Tim Baldwin out of Pensacola, Florida. And as usual, we have a special guest today on the show. Her name is Crystal Ball. Crystal, welcome.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Well, for everybody who doesn't know you, I have a bio that I could read about you, but as we were mentioning before, it's too long to read. So let me just hit some highlights. So Crystal is an entrepreneur. She is a real estate professional. She's an investor. She has started her own businesses. She has sold businesses. She's a consultant. She's an author. She's published books. Crystal, you have a lot going on in your life, which is why I wanted to have you on, because it's exciting to see someone who's this busy. And so for those who are listening and watching the show, we're going to glean some stuff from you today. Okay.
Awesome.
So I want to just, as I usually do with guests, I want to just have a conversation because I want folks to be able to learn from other people's experiences as a way of motivating them to better their lives, to improve their lives. And of course, a lot of that has to do with what do you do for an income? What do you do for business? What do you do as a career? It's such a huge part of our life. So share with the folks just a snippet, kind of like who you are now and kind of some things that led you there. And I want to flesh this out so we can talk more about your journey.
Well, who I am now is changed drastically. I had a conversation with my best friend last night. We were talking about how you enter the second half of life. And there's a great book called Finding Meaning in the Second Half of Life. And so many discussions I have with people these days revolve around purpose. When you hit these middle-aged years, you start having friends pass away. I just had a client pass of cancer. So the conversation becomes less about money and more about human connection. And so I have chased money and very successfully a lot of my life. And then a recent head injury for myself and watching a lot of clients either pass away or family members, I'm at a very different place in life. I'm a different human with a lot more empathy today than I was a few years ago, I'd say. Wow.
That says a lot just in that short statement. I mean, I'm a firm believer that, life is not all about money. Money just cannot make you happy. I mean, certainly it brings conveniences to our lives and some flexibilities that you wouldn't have otherwise, but relationships and that means yourself, the relationship with yourself and other people. So that's kicking this off, I think, in the right direction. So what do you do now? What do you spend most of your time doing though right now?
I've been very active in real estate sales over the past 3 years. And then last year started a vacational management company. But after the head injury, I quickly exited that. It was very heavy operations and we timed that wrong. And on the vacational management side in Florida, with the tax law changes and everything that's going on with the industry here, you've got doubled costs, double insurance, double everything in pricing. And so people that never rented are renting. So it's really saturating the market. So we've had a big, change very quickly. So I'm cleaning up. I'm in cleanup mode this year, and then I'm segueing it more into books. I'm working on. I'm going to Savannah this weekend, bringing a new boat club into market. There's one that'll be expanding along the Emerald Coast here. I'm doing. Busy Bee is building a new site in Bonifay, Florida. So I'm working on that is a very big commercial project. So I'm segueing more over to that. I just joined a commercial broker, very experienced in the commercial space. So real estate still takes up the majority of my professional time, but in my finding new meaning and the purpose, I have worked really hard on getting the right partnerships. I realized I want to work with the people I like to work with. That's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. When you're in corporate, you got to work with whoever's in front of you. But as an entrepreneur, you can pick and choose who you want to work with. In some of those cases, and that's how we were connected, was one of the financial advisors at one of the speaking engagements I had recently connected us because I inherited a probate case for a dear friend of mine who just passed. And so that's taking up a lot of time when you're dealing, you don't know Florida law. That's why I want to connect with more attorneys. You don't understand the implications of Florida law in real estate until you're going through it.
Yeah.
So you don't know what you don't know. That's been my lesson this year.
Absolutely. So so you're in real estate, you're finding different things, I guess, that are bringing, I guess, that more purpose in your life.
Yeah.
And so before though, now kind of where did you start? And then what was the lessons or the experiences that you had that then began to push you into real estate? What does that look like?
Well, real estate was an accident. I was a corporate sales machine. I flew. I was. You said something earlier. You got to know yourself. I ran from myself. I had complete disassociation from myself as a child because I came out of a very difficult upbringing in a cult.
Gotcha.
And so I ran hard and fast, very successfully in sales. I realized my charm and charisma early on was very conducive to sales. And I was such a people pleaser, having been raised as a child slave. I was very good at facilitating other people's needs. And turns out you don't have to worry about yourself if you're very busy working for other people.
Right.
So I was top in sales at all three companies I worked in after college in the food service industry. Panama City Beach was the place I came to most frequently with the owners of Express Lanes. And I love this area. So I ended up moving here 10 years ago. And I rolled my 401k to a self-directed IRA the year my second child was born. Now, first child was easy. Second child, life changer, baby, wouldn't take a bottle. So I was bored out of my mind at home. And so I invested in my first condo. So it was a total fluke how I get into this. I just wanted a passive investment and, I did not know anything about the vacation rental industry. So I got into it accidentally on the vacation rental side, signed over 200 properties under management with the top 2 vacation rental management companies, learned everything not to do. I was fired at both those companies. I was never fired. I'm like number one in everything, right? How can they fire me? Best lesson I've ever learned. Because the big contrast to me in corporate versus entrepreneurship, in corporate, if somebody's stealing, you fire them. In the entrepreneur world, if they can get away with it, they do. And my broker said something the other day, and I see this with my kids. He said, in our generation, getting the information was the challenge. In today's generation, I watch my 12-year-old struggle with his, personally, how to connect with people. Their challenge is who to trust in this.
Right.
I've learned a lot of valuable lessons, which is why I've really honed in on who to work with. Because in this day and time, I think that with the sea of information, and I mean, we are just overrun with AI, it's making it even worse. Yeah. I love information and technology, but that has become the challenge.
Wow. That says a lot right there. So, a lot of my audience are real estate investors, property management companies, those types of things, which you have experience with. So I want to talk a little bit about that. First of all, with the investor, what are some of the things, because I know you've invested in your own properties and rented them out, probably flipped them, sold them, that kind of thing.
All of it, yeah.
All that. So if you can, for those kinds of listeners out there who can learn from your mistakes or learn some lessons from you, what would you tell them today?
Don't believe the hype.
Yeah.
There's so much good marketing, and listen, I'm a huge Bigger Pockets fan, but you even see a lot of backlash with that. Having I'm writing a book right now on my experience growing up in this cult, having watched what my parents did. It's all about balance to me. I've got a butterfly analogy. Everybody's so divided, left wing or right wing. The wings do not decide where that butterfly goes. The heart and the mind do, right? And I think that a lot of the people I talk to are in active survival mode stage. And when you're first starting out and you're trying to do better for your kids, it's all done out of a good purpose, right? Of wanting to do better yourself and help your family. Yeah. But then you get caught in this swirl and there's so much information and a lot of it's hype, because what they don't tell you is the market is now, I've got clients losing 100,000. I've got clients losing 200,000. I've got clients builders, experienced, phenomenal builders in tears over leverage this year. Wow. So I'm a fan now with what I've learned to build your foundation a lot more solid first before you go out investing. I see a lot of people over leveraging early on. Not that these mistakes aren't also good to learn. I've learned a lot myself. Yeah. But the caution there is to not believe all the hype.
So the foundation, describe what the foundation is then.
OPM, other people's money, is so common, but had I to do it over again, I would have put a lot more of my money into my primary asset. That's the one the state can't take away. If anything happens, that your primary needs to be super solid first, then start taking the risk. I tend to do things at a very rapid pace, it turns out. Yeah. So, I did 12 flips in the first 3 years with all the property management, with exiting another business. So I did too much at once. But yeah, I think that that foundation needs to be a core asset base that's tighter before you start over leveraging into and don't do too much too fast. There's a seat. I call it my cocooning stage. It's okay to take a break and reset and restructure. And each time I do that, I come back way more successful because I have got the strategy down and given myself the time to think through the next decisions rather than just, because when you're in that vortex of survival mode and just, I timed it right in real estate. I hit it in 2021, did 23 million my first year. But when you're in that vortex of learning too, you've got to give yourself more time to learn. I think real estate is one of the hardest. It is by far the hardest industry I've learned because the information is not succinct and the system itself is so, this is not a good system for the consumer. So and that's, I think, why there's more hype in it now that I know what I know. So.
Well, it's interesting that you say that as far as sort of waiting or the cocoon period, because for what I see a lot that's being pushed, of course, these are interested businesses that want you to buy into services. I get that. But the push is to always double, you buy 1 unit, then you buy 2 units, then you buy 4 units, then you buy 8 units, then you buy 16, so on and so forth. And you're supposed to do that at every certain periodic time. So it's sort of a forced schedule. I mean, obviously you don't have to if you don't want to, but that's the mentality. And I wonder if, like you just given your experience, if you could begin to just do way too much, way too soon.
That's what I see. So many of the gurus, they put it, again, it's hype. It's a push. Okay. I outpace almost anybody I've ever met in this lifetime. Okay. But I didn't think I could burn out. I didn't think it could ever catch up to me. But now that it has, the head injury was a sign that fell on my head, literally a decorative sign. It said, "This is my happy place." It was like the universe saying, because I have permanent vision disruption now from the nerve damage done in this freak accident, right? Wow. But this is my happy place. I looked at where I was happiest. It wasn't making $500,000 a year. It wasn't dealing with the stress of an assistant that was stealing or the people that were just taking advantage of my kindness. It was in my own peace and calm, right? And I love experience and travel. And the better you know yourself and what your objective and goals are, you're just much more successful in achieving what you want for your life. And so when I consult with clients, I lose a lot of listings these days because I'm not going to list your house for $639. They're $39,000 when it's worth $500,000. Right. But the sucker down there, surfer dude, what's up? He'll do it. Yeah. Okay. And he'll get the commission on it, but you're going to come back to me in a few years knowing I was right. And, but people don't want to listen anymore. They want to believe the hype. And I've been in sales my entire life. I can hype better than anybody, but in good conscience, I had to look at what was best for me and my family, and calm and peace was much happier for us than this vortex of spinning out into what everybody says you should do, but wasn't I was very far outside. I was so far outside my comfort zone that I could. And part of what is the conflict for me is that I see people that have millions and millions of dollars in assets. But I was the kid growing up as a tenant in a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, rat-infested shithole of a home. I was the tenant, right? And so, you're seeing Hawaii right now as a perfect example of it. They're banning short-term rentals. I'm in the short-term rental business. I just exited it partly because it's difficult to see people having to leave my own community because Panama City Beach is just like Hawaii right now. They're having to move north because we can't afford the cost of living here, because the investors can, for a tax write-off system. Okay. So kudos to people who can work the system, but my sense of humanity overwhelmed my greed and capitalist nature.
Yeah.
And it turns out that's my happy place.
Yeah.
You can make that determining factor, but I think that that's not talked about enough in real estate because people are still too busy trying to make a dollar. I determined I don't need to make as many dollars. And then turns out people trust me a lot more anyway, because I'm not after, because I'm going to tell them the truth, right? I'm going to err on the side of truth, which is why I was fired too. You're not going to steal from my clients, me not talk about it. Yeah. You're going to fix the problem and deal with the thief, or, so drawing that line in the sand, I'm not as popular as, some other realtors. I don't want to be. What works for me is, and what is my happy place is my amazing life at the beach. It's calm. It's happy. I don't have nearly as many clients. I'm much more selective in who I work with now, and I'm back to happy. Yeah. And I feel like I'm having a lot more of an impact because the people I do help, I'm really helping, not just selling them on what I'm not just collecting that commission check, which is what I see so many agents out here doing, which is why I think you've got this huge upset apple cart right now.
So how long have you then been in the, the corporate world, the real estate world? How long has it taken you in this process?
I was 13 years in corporate. I was with Alligator Ice right out of college, then Cormark International after a 7-year stint at S&D Coffee. So I did 3 different big, I did the small, medium, large company track. And I'll never forget my boss at when I was leaving the coffee company, she said, well, Crystal, you can, because they offered me a data analyst position in the national accounts. She said, well, you can be a big fish in a small pond, or you can see if you can swim with the big fish. Or so in the big pond. Yeah. And I was number 1 in that company in 14 months. So, I was a racehorse trying to solve all problems. And I'm good at data analysis and lots of, I was a communications major. Right. So, but the entrepreneur role, I did this, the life changer baby is 7. So really 7 years, but I didn't get into real estate until about 2 years into that. So it's only been 5 years, and I've, but producing such high numbers and accomplishing as much as fast as I did, what I was after, and what I realized my driver really is, a lot of this, in addition to experience, is the education. I want to know how things work. That's how you solve problems. And I like to be a problem solver, because to me, that's what makes the world a better place. It's what I want to see for my kids.
So your story is interesting to me because, a lot of people, what they really want to hear is sort of what you described that you used to do. How can I get more? Yeah. And not talking a whole lot about life quality or personal quality. And so for people who are maybe getting into, say, entrepreneurial endeavors, what would you say? Hey, look, I recognize what you want to do. You want to make money, like you want to make good money. You want a good life for yourself, but beware of these traps that these roads can lead you down. What are those traps?
Well, first, I want to talk about the purpose of that. It's not money anyone's after that I see. It's stability, right? People think it's money, but money is not what provides stability. And especially dealing with probate cases and more complicated transactions, people are looking for that longevity, for stability. So once I understood that money was not what I was after and stability was, it's easier to stabilize. The traps in that are I call it a hamster wheel. When you get on the hamster wheel of entrepreneurship, what they don't teach you in corporate is how to create passive income, or how to get the money coming back. They want to contribute to the system, and you're just in the system, right? I successfully catapulted out of the system. However, the problems it created for me were more stressful than the problems I had in the system. And I don't think a lot of people will admit that. Everybody says, oh, the American dream. Well, every American dream I've had has come with such a long list of complex problems that I have said, okay, no. Because the white picket fence house and my first huge home in Birmingham, I spent every weekend raking the yard, doing leaves, doing the yard. I was a slave to that house. I'm like, no, that's not what I wanted. Same thing with the businesses. The businesses consumed us to the point. My now ex-husband had a stroke And that's what led to a lot of the current state of affairs I'm in. When he had the stroke, I found out, I thought that, I lost both my grandparents that year, had Hurricane Michael. He had the stroke in my first year starting a new business.
Wow.
We went $1.5 million in sales in a landscape startup. And the day after his stroke, I found out he had been lying since the day I met him. He had never been to college. But I chose the path of forgiveness with him. And this is where, again, the humanity comes in to play. I look at people for the intent they have, right? His intent in lying to me was to get me. Who can blame you? I'm quite the catch. I humor through everything, right?
Yeah.
But it didn't make it right, but it did allow me to forgive him. And I think part of what we've lost in this world is looking at the intent people have. And there's so much friction right now, right? I try to cut through a lot of that red tape, and turns out you can accomplish a lot more, a lot faster by vetting. The biggest mistake I think I made was not vetting the right partners. In corporate, I picked phenomenal mentors. In real estate, I've had a very hard time doing that because I didn't understand a competing broker versus a non-competing broker. I don't think there should be competing brokers allowed in this business. That does create a monopoly. You got young whippersnappers like me coming in that take them the biggest deals. They take it right out of your hands and you don't even know what the hell just happened because they're not your boss, right? So there's lessons that you learn in entrepreneurship that they don't talk about, and you don't learn any of this in college. Like, I got my degree. Kudos to me. That's nothing other than, my brain was already geared like it is. So, and I do believe that trades are, small businesses are going to make a big comeback because we have a labor problem right now. More than anything I see is a labor problem. Yeah.
Well, there are things happening. There are changes being made, but it's kind of like the new rules that NAR, the realtors are having to deal with right now. That's an example of a change, a big change, I guess you might say. And there might be others. I think what's happening though, I think, is that people in general are just looking more closely at the world in the sense that they realize they're more vulnerable than they probably have thought in the past. And so when you feel that vulnerability, you begin to look around and you say, well, where are the points of attack?
Right.
And so you look at big industries, you look at real estate. You look at corporate, you look at legal, government, those huge categories that control so much of our lives, you start to really look at them. So it's fascinating. We could talk another day or so about that, but we don't have time. I want to skip to something that you mentioned, that you were writing a book, and I know it's probably of a personal nature, personal experiences, but it plays into your story. And so just real briefly, what are you working on there?
So the first one is called Diary of a Cult Girl, and it's a collection of journals and letters that I had written from 14 to 20 years old in that cult. And it's like the Anne Frank Diary of Cult Life, and it's absolutely heartbreaking, the isolation, the poverty. And I didn't know, when you're brought up in poverty, but you're told to be grateful because God has blessed you. Well, you think you're God's chosen, right? So the brainwashing of being subservient as a female, the umbrella of protection is here and it was on Amazon, Shiny Happy People, the show that came out last year, that docuseries, that's the cult I was raised in.
Oh, wow.
So when you see, I literally had a panic attack, gripping the chair because I saw that cult leader for the first time in 20 plus years, so not many people get to see their childhood trauma right there on television. But so the book's is a collection of those. The second book is called Lambs, and it's an acronym for the 5 things they controlled: your love, attitude, mind, body, and spirit. So I've been doing a really deep dive in trauma therapy. Turns out that hyperachievement and overachievement that so many of us have, I see this very commonly. It's a real mad dash scramble away from dealing with the reality of the upbringings we had and not looking at internally how that affected us emotionally. So I'm a world-class sprinter away from emotion, let me tell you.
Wow. That's very interesting. Obviously everybody deals with certain amounts of childhood disappointment, some worse than others, some worse, obviously. I like to think that my kids have an excellent childhood with excellent parents, and I'm trying to keep it that way, of course. But that shapes so much of who we are and who we become. And some people It becomes a challenge to deal with that as they get older and become adults. And so it's it's a sad. I know that has to be a traumatic and sad time of your life, but it also has the lessons you've learned along the way and what you have become and are becoming for your children and for your community is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, and I've had to reframe, and that's why I'm doing this. Is I'm looking at how I'm reframing that for my kids, because, like you said, you want a better life for your kids. But one of my clients, I had an in-depth conversation with one of the top realtors in Dallas, and he's amazing. And he said something I'll never. I think it's forever changed my view of things. He goes, "I have PTSD raising my daughter," and I'm like, that's exactly what it's been with me raising my kids, because when they go onto a sports field and they play soccer, flag football, baseball, I never got to play a sport. I don't feel sorry for myself at all, but I didn't even understand the contrast of that and what an advantage that kids who had parents who loved them and didn't use them as, to produce more for God. The religious culture in the rural America still tends to be very, they push a lot of women into these subservient roles. And so it was against my nature to lead. It was only when my husband had a stroke and I had no option but to step up. Turns out I was really damn good at leading, but I didn't know that because I had been taught not to. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think the goal in publishing the books is to help other people. I think a lot of people don't have the courage to just say what happened to them. Yeah. I've had to come to terms with it so hard because every day I'm parenting my kids. It's a correction in my head for what I was taught that I cannot do for those kids. And, I'm super proud of the fact my 12-year-old sporting new Nikes and flexing in the mirror, getting all, because he's proud of himself and he's able to blend in. People don't understand the need to blend in and be part of a society unless you haven't had that. Right. I never had a childhood friend. I never had normal social situations. So of course I stuck out like a sore thumb, right? I didn't know it. Why? Right. Until I went back. And anyway, the books hopefully will help a lot with that. Business is awesome. And I still love it. And it's so easy for me to run comps, and it's so easy for me to analyze now from an education standpoint after the past, I say I've got my master's degree. Now I'm going on the commercial development, working with more attorneys and financial advisors to get my doctorate. That's how I put it in my education level.
Yeah. We all have levels of experience exactly. and education, but but what you say, the reason you're writing your book is probably I would imagine a bit of personal, what is it? You're unburdening.
It's cathartic.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the other part, of course, is that you're trying to help other people. And of course, I can't help but to think about what I do for a living, which is I try to help landlords not make mistakes they shouldn't be making. Because as you mentioned, it's not all a bed of roses all the time. Like it can be hard to be a property owner and to try to build, a portfolio that works for you. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And so I know that you can appreciate that. I tell you what, absolutely. I wish that it was easier somehow, I guess, to maybe convince or persuade or I guess demonstrate for people who just think that they have to do it all by themselves, without the help of professionals, because as you probably well know, that could be a lonely road and it could be frustrating.
Well, that is really my, in cult land, we're taught the Bible says don't have partners. The Bible says, they've got all these things that they put into your head. And so I was scared of the world of entrepreneurship for a long time, but now I understand the value in that. My life changed when I got a CPA financial advisor to teach me how to structure the tax strategy. I can talk ROI, cash flow. I know the numbers and the math, but I have spent hours and hours and hours learning that. Because I was taught, I was a girl, I didn't need math. And all I do now is consult on finances, So, it's when you have to reframe these conversations and look at life differently, it forces you into a different role, that's where you grow.
Yeah.
I've been outside when I met my real dad, I didn't meet him until I was 20. And he said, you don't grow until you get outside your comfort zone. I'm like, well, I'm a world-class outside your comfort zone girl. Because, once I left, I had never been to a mall. I had never had steak. I had never, basic things that people take for granted. Right. And so I think sometimes as landlords, and I think sometimes I see some of my wealthy friends, I'm like, they're so disconnected from reality of what's going on with their tenants.
Yeah.
Right. You got to maintain the humanity in that.
Yeah.
You got to make money too, but
Yeah.
you got to me, again, I strive for balance. That's my happy place in the middle of the sea of crazy.
Yeah. No, well, that's important. I think balance is important no matter what it is you're talking about. Family, work, play, doesn't matter to maintain that balance of life.
Yeah.
So, let's take the last 2, 3, 5 minutes or so and just if you can leave the listeners with a few nuggets, that if you could just hope that someone's listening to you right now and say, what can I share with these people that I believe will help them on their journey?
Get your back end finances buttoned up. Get to those experts that understand money to help you structure it properly at the beginning and protect you for what's to come, because things can happen. Things are always going to happen that you cannot plan for. Okay. Strokes, global pandemics, hurricanes, it takes a lot to rattle me anymore. But if you're not prepared for those things, because I wasn't, I didn't know what I didn't know on insurance, on finance, so you get people think I thought you had to have money to have a financial advisor. No, you get a financial advisor at the start of making money to teach you how to structure. And I'm not talking a stock trader. I'm talking a financial advisor who understands the entrepreneur world, right? So that's what I would do different. And then also, again, just know yourself. When you understand yourself and what drives you, all the executive coaches and all these great gurus I've worked with, they're like, what do you want? I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to do what's right. We get caught in this societal, cultural, and familial expectations. What do I want? Mm-hmm. I don't need millions of dollars. I'm happy traveling with my kids and playing at the beach and working 2 or 3 hours a day. That's much happier for me than working 15 hours a day, making millions. I don't care about the money. So when you know yourself, to me, that's where you find your happy places, when you know yourself. And those are the 2 things those are my key takeaways.
Well, that last one's a big one. Of course, the financial advisor, of course, we had Ben Boyd on the show recently. Yes. And he shared a lot about the importance of that. So I'm sure our audience knows that well. But the one that maybe people haven't thought as much about is knowing yourself, knowing what you want to accomplish, living your life in a way that, of course, is real. It's genuine. People, as you said earlier, people trust you more when they know you're genuine and you're driven by something that's more important than just how much money can I bring in. Yeah. So it's a great lesson. It's a great lesson. Crystal, I'm so glad you came on the show today. So you have a great and interesting story, and I hope everybody was listening who can, and I'm sure they enjoyed it as I did. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today, and I hope to have you on the show again sometime in the future. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Perfect. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Crystal. And for everybody who's listening, thanks for listening to the show. If you haven't followed us, follow Property Management Law Solutions podcast. Of course, if you are a landlord, property management company, apartment company, and you need a lawyer, let us know at Property Management Law Solutions. Y'all have a great day.